Rain hits the glass like it's trying to get in. A sealed white envelope. Shaking in a grown man's hand. Jang I-han, the man's soul doesn't say no to, is on his knees in a hospital hallway. Because the paper in his hand just told him two things. The baby is his. And there isn't one. There are two. Twins. And the woman he punished with 5 months of silence, the woman he decided, alone, in the dark, had betrayed him, never did anything wrong at all. She just watches him break. And says the sentence that's about to ruin you. You needed a test, to believe me. But I needed a husband who would just, ask me. If that line hit you, good. Stay with this one till the end, because it only gets heavier from here. Welcome to Afro-Korean Love Empire, where these stories live. Subscribe now, drop a comment telling me if you could ever forgive someone who doubted you without asking for your side, and let's go all the way back to the beginning, because this didn't start in a hospital. It started with a boy who was taught that love was the one thing a powerful man could never afford. Jang I-han was not born cold. He was built that way. Piece by piece. On purpose. His father, Jang Moo-suk, didn't build the family empire with charm. He built it with fear, the kind that outlives the man who created it. In that house, love wasn't spoken. It was treated like a crack in the foundation. Something you patch over before anyone notices it's there. I-han's mother was the only warm thing in that whole cold house. She used to hold his face in both hands, just for a second, right before he left for school, and tell him something his father never once said out loud. That power means nothing if you lose yourself getting it. She died when I-han was young. Too young to really understand what he was losing. Old enough to feel the exact size of the hole it left. After she was gone, his father made sure nothing soft ever grew back in that house again. Enemies, his father told him, will always look for the thing you love most. So love nothing they can find. There's one memory that stayed with him longer than the rest. He was 12. Found crying, quietly, in a stairwell, thinking nobody was watching, after the family dog died. The only creature in that house that had ever greeted him like he mattered. His father found him there. Didn't yell. Didn't comfort him either. Just crouched down, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "Everything soft dies first." Then walked away. Left a 12-year-old alone on a stairwell with that sentence, expected to already understand it. I-han never cried in front of another human being after that. Not once. Not even at his own mother's funeral, not really, not where anyone could see it. He waited until that night, locked the bathroom door, ran the faucet so nobody would hear. That's the boy underneath all of it. The suits. The empire. The name that ends negotiations before they start. By 18, I-han had the lesson memorized like scripture. Never trust easily. Never beg for anything, least of all love. Never let a single soul know what could break you. By 35, he'd become exactly what his father raised him to be. CEO of Jang Global Holdings by day. One of the most disciplined men in the Korean underworld by night. Picture it like this, if it helps. Imagine sitting at the very top of a Fortune 500 company by day. Board meetings. Shareholder calls. Photos in business magazines. And by night, running something more feared than anything you've seen in an American crime drama, except quieter. No shootouts in the street. Just phone calls that end careers. Meetings where men leave paler than they walked in. That was I-han's whole life. Two worlds, wearing the same face. Men twice his age lowered their eyes when he walked into a room. His name alone had ended negotiations before they started. But here's the thing nobody tells you about men like that. They still get lonely. Brutally lonely. He'd sit in his penthouse above the Han River, glass walls, city lights stretched out for miles, and feel absolutely nothing. He'd walk into rooms full of people who wanted something from him and realize, every single time, that not one of them actually saw him. They saw the empire. The protection. The name. The number in his account. Nobody saw the boy whose mother used to hold his face like it mattered. Not until Oyen. Her name is Oyen Adeyemi. She came to Seoul from Lagos, Nigeria, on a fellowship, the kind that brings sharp, capable young women halfway across the world to build something, not to find someone. Life in Seoul was not soft on her. The language. The stares she'd get on the subway that she learned to stop noticing. The quiet assumptions people made the second they saw her, before she'd said a single word. She never let any of it shrink her. She worked with migrant families. International students. Women trying to rebuild a life in a country that didn't always make room for them. And she treated the cleaner in the hallway with the exact same respect she gave the executive in the boardroom. Because that's just who she was. People sometimes assumed, quietly, or not so quietly, that a woman like her, in a city like that, must be looking for a rich man. A way up. A way out. They were wrong. Oyen didn't want to be saved. She wanted love that felt like peace, not a cage with better lighting. They met at a winter charity gala in Gangnam. He was there because his company sponsored it. Zero interest in being there, the plan was appear, write a check, leave before the second course. Oyen was there as a volunteer coordinator. Then, mid-event, a small boy, maybe 7, African and Korean both, the kind of kid people in that room didn't quite know what to do with, bumped into a display stand. A glass sculpture worth more than his mother's yearly salary hit the marble floor and shattered. The room went dead silent. A sponsor, red-faced, furious over a piece of glass, started tearing into the boy's mother right there in front of everyone. Careless. Ungrateful. The kind of words that aren't really about the glass at all. Nobody moved to stop it. Then Ihan stepped forward. The whole room tensed, because everyone there knew exactly who he was, and they braced for something worse than words. Instead, he took off his own coat. Draped it over the boy's shaking shoulders. Told the sponsor, quiet, flat, more dangerous for how calm it was, that the sculpture was already paid for. No shouting. Didn't need to shout. Oyen watched all of it from across the room. And that was the moment, not the boardrooms, not the empire, not a single dollar of it, that was the moment she saw something in him nobody else in that room could see. Later, she walked up to thank him. But not the way people normally thanked him, not with their eyes down, not performing gratitude for the powerful man. She just looked at him. The same way she'd look at anyone. What you did was kind, she told him. Then, gentler, almost teasing, you hide it like it's a crime. He didn't know what to say to that. Genuinely didn't. Nobody talked to him like that. Ever. He asked if she wasn't afraid of him. She thought about it, actually thought about it, didn't just answer to be polite. I'm careful around dangerous men, she said. But I'm not blind. Beat. You're not as dark as people think you are. That sentence followed him home that night. Followed him for weeks, honestly. He couldn't shake it. What came next wasn't fast. It wasn't fireworks. It was slow, the kind of slow that actually means something, because it's built out of 100 tiny choices instead of one big one. He started quietly funding programs she cared about. Didn't put his name on it. She figured it out anyway, she always figured things out, and instead of thanking him for it, she asked him, straight, why he never let anyone see the good he did. He didn't have an answer for that either. He started showing up in small ways. Sent a driver to take her home the night it snowed hard enough that the subway lines shut down, didn't ride with her, just made sure she got there safe, and never mentioned it again. She found out from the driver, not from him. She started leaving him voice notes when she couldn't sleep, nothing dramatic, just the small noise of her day. He never told her he listened to every single one twice. He noticed things about her. The way she always slipped her shoes off before stepping into an elderly woman's home. The way she remembered everyone's name, the driver, the janitor, the kid at the noodle stall. The way she argued with him, really argued, not the careful, managed disagreement everyone else gave him, and never once flinched when he pushed back. She noticed things about him too. The way he always stood near exits, even in his own building. Like safety was a habit, not a feeling. The way his jaw would tighten, just barely, whenever anyone mentioned his father. The way he'd go quiet in restaurants that played the kind of piano music his mother used to hum. One night, months in, she found him standing outside her building in the snow. Hadn't called. Hadn't knocked. How long have you been out here? She asked. Long enough to know I wasn't going to leave without seeing you were okay, he said. She let him in. They didn't sleep together that night. They talked until 4 in the morning, about his mother, about the stairwell, about a father who taught him that softness was a liability. She didn't try to fix him. She just listened, and that, more than anything anyone had ever done for him, undid something in his chest. He sent guards to watch over her once, quietly, without telling her. She found out. And instead of being flattered, she confronted him. Told him, straight to his face, protection without honesty is still control. He respected that more than he wanted to admit. Pulled the guards the same day. Small moments kept stacking up. He remembered she liked ginger tea when it rained. He learned her mother's name without being told, because he'd quietly asked someone at the fellowship office. She caught him visiting his own mother's memorial one evening, alone, flowers in hand, and understood, without needing him to explain it, exactly where his coldness came from. There was a night she got a call that her father back in Lagos had been hospitalized. She sat on her kitchen floor at 2 a.m., phone in her lap, an ocean and a continent between her and the one man who'd raised her alone. She didn't call Ihan. Didn't want to be a burden. He showed up anyway. Someone had told him. Didn't say much. Just sat on the floor next to her, in a suit that cost more than her rent, and let her cry into his shoulder until the sun came up. Booked her flight home before she even asked. Arranged the best care her father's hospital could give, quietly, the way he did everything that mattered. That was the night she stopped being careful with her heart around him. He fell for her because she saw him as a person. Not a weapon. She fell for him because underneath everything, she could see exactly who he could become, if he ever stopped hiding behind the fear. But here's the complication. The real one. Ihan didn't know how to say, "I need you." Didn't have the words. Nobody had ever taught him. And Oyen, she loved him enough not to force it out of him before he was ready. Which, looking back, might have been the first crack. Because some things you can't wait forever for someone to say out loud. He proposed after a dangerous night. One of his rivals threatened a community center Oyen worked at, trying to send him a message through her. Ihan handled it. Handled it the way he handled everything. But afterward, she confronted him. Told him she didn't want a life where violence followed her every single day for the rest of it. Told him she'd seen what fear did to people, and she refused to spend her life shrinking to fit inside his. And he, shaken, actually shaken, by the thought of losing her, told her the truth for maybe the first time in his adult life. "My world isn't safe," he said. "But the safest place I know how to build, is beside me." He didn't promise easy. He promised honesty. Protection. That she would never be treated like something he owned. She didn't say yes right away. She thought about it. Hard. Knew what people would say, that she married him for the money, the name, the penthouse. Knew others would fear her just for standing next to him. Knew her own mother, back in Lagos, would ask her, gently, if she understood exactly what kind of man she was choosing. But she thought about the coat over that boy's shoulders. The quiet donations with no name attached. The night he stood outside her building in the snow. The night he sat on her kitchen floor at 2 a.m. and said nothing, because nothing needed saying. She said yes. Not for survival. For him. Married life was beautiful. On the surface, at least. Mansion overlooking the river. Everything money could buy. But inside there were things neither of them said out loud. Ihan loved her the only way he knew how, by providing, by protecting, by watching from a distance. But the second something actually hurt him, he went quiet. The second he felt afraid, he pulled back instead of leaning in. Oyen noticed. She was patient about it. Told herself love takes time. Told herself he'd get there. But somewhere, underneath the patience, there was a small, quiet fear. That his silence, the thing she found so intriguing in the beginning, might one day become the thing that broke them. She was right. She found out she was pregnant on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Sat on the bathroom floor of that huge, beautiful house and just cried. Happy tears. Terrified tears. Both at once. She sat there for almost an hour before she could stand. Because pregnancy, for her, wasn't just joy. It was fear too, the kind nobody warns you about. Fear of loving someone that much. Fear of bringing a child into a world where her husband's enemies existed in the same breath as his love for her. Fear, quietly, that she wouldn't be enough, Not beautiful enough, not Korean enough, not the right kind of wife for a man like him, in a country that still sometimes looked at her like she didn't belong in the rooms she walked into. She wanted to tell him in a way that would actually reach him. Not just an announcement, a moment. So she planned something small. A tiny pair of baby shoes in a black velvet box, left on his desk with a handwritten note. You once told me you didn't know if you could build a family. I believe we already have. She never got to give it to him. Because before she could, a man named Baek Ryu-sang found out first. Ryu-sang was Ihon's most dangerous rival. Smooth where Ihon was silent. Strategic where Ihon was disciplined. And completely without the one thing Ihon still had, buried deep, a moral floor. Ryu-sang had spent 3 years trying to bring Ihon down. Business wars. Political pressure. Stolen shipments. Underground alliances that folded the second Ihon applied real weight. None of it worked. Ryu-sang had a room in his private office, a wall, actually, covered floor to ceiling with photographs, timelines, red string connecting names. Every failed attempt on that wall. Every man he'd sent who came back with nothing, or didn't come back at all. He used to stand in front of that wall at night with a drink in his hand, studying it the way a general studies a battlefield he keeps losing. Then one night, he stopped looking at Ihon. He started looking at what Ihon loved. He found the one door Ihon had never learned to guard. Oyen. He didn't need to touch her. He just needed to make Ihon doubt her. A bribed clinic assistant leaked the pregnancy. From there, Ryu-sang understood exactly what he was looking at. A pregnancy meant a stronger bloodline. A stronger bloodline meant a more stable empire. More loyal men. Harder alliances to break. But doubt around that pregnancy. That could unravel everything from the inside, without Ryu-sang ever having to fire a single shot. He didn't need to destroy Ihon. He just needed Ihon to destroy himself. His men started following Oyen. Quietly. Cafes. Clinics. Community meetings. Building a timeline. Collecting photos. Studying every innocent hour of her day, looking for the one moment they could twist. Ryu-sang was patient about it, almost enjoyed it. He told his men, more than once, that the best lie isn't built. It's found. You don't need to invent a woman's secrets. You just need to take her kindness and rename it. They found it. A man Oyen had helped once through her community program, completely innocent, completely unconnected to anything romantic, became the centerpiece of a fabricated affair. Edited photos. A staged hotel lobby shot. A fake message thread built to look believable, not dramatic. Just believable enough. That's the part that makes it dangerous. Not obvious. Just enough truth around the edges to make the lie breathe. The evidence reached Ihon through a man he trusted, Park Jun-seo. Quietly bribed. Quietly jealous, if we're honest, of a boss he felt had gone soft since the marriage. Jun-seo had watched Ihon cancel meetings for doctor's appointments, soften in ways he never used to, and something in him, envy, maybe, or a belief that softness itself was betrayal of the old ways, made him easy for Ryu-sang to buy. Jun-seo laid it all out. Photos. Locations. The fake lobby shot. A clinic date that lined up just wrong enough to plant a question in Ihon's mind that he could never quite unplant. Ihon sat with all of it in silence. Didn't shout. Didn't break a single thing in that office. That's what made it worse. His face just emptied out. Inside, though, something was dying. His father's voice came back to him, uninvited, the way old lessons always do at the worst possible moment. The woman you love is the easiest door for your enemies. And instead of walking straight to Oyen and asking her, just asking her, Ihon did the one thing his whole upbringing had trained him to do. He went quiet. And that silence became its own kind of violence. He stopped touching her stomach when he passed her in the hallway. Stopped asking about the baby. Started working later. Sleeping in his office instead of their bed. Answering her questions in 4 words. 3, if he could manage it. He sent drivers. Stopped walking beside her himself. Oyen didn't know what had changed. She replayed every conversation from the last 2 weeks, searching for the moment she'd said something wrong. She wondered if the pregnancy scared him. Wondered if she'd become too much, a burden he hadn't signed up for. Wondered, in her darker moments, if this was simply who he'd always been underneath the coat over the boy's shoulders version of him, and she'd married a mirage. She tried. Cooked his favorite meal from scratch, the one his mother used to make, that she'd learned from an old family cook, he'd already eaten. Waited up with the lights on, he came home after she'd fallen asleep, and turned them off so gently she never woke to know he'd been there at all. Left small notes in his coat pockets, the way she used to. He never mentioned finding them. She started to wonder if he even looked. Asked, finally, straight out, standing in the kitchen with her hand on her stomach, if she'd done something wrong. "You should rest," he said. 4 words. And somehow those 4 words hurt more than any accusation could have. Because it wasn't anger. It was distance. Dressed up as care. She started going to her doctor's appointments alone. Sat in waiting rooms full of couples, every other woman with a hand to hold, hers folded in her own lap. She'd smile politely when the nurses asked if her husband was parking the car. Say he was busy. Learn to say it without her voice cracking. She started preparing the nursery in secret, partly hope, partly a way to hold on to something that still felt real. She painted one wall herself, small hands in a roller, because doing something with her hands was easier than sitting still with her thoughts. One night she sat alone in that half-finished room, holding the tiny baby shoes she'd once meant to give him, and whispered, to nobody. "Your father is here." Pause. "But I miss him." She started keeping a journal that month, not for anyone, just for herself, just to have somewhere to put the parts of the day she couldn't say out loud. One entry reads simply, "I don't know which is heavier. Carrying this baby, or carrying his silence." She never once thought about leaving. That's the part that made it worse, if she was honest with herself. She still loved him completely, even while he was disappearing in front of her. Love doesn't turn off just because it stops being returned the way you need it to be. She just didn't understand, yet, that he wasn't disappearing because he'd stopped loving her. He was disappearing because he believed, with his whole broken heart, that he'd lost her already, and didn't know how to survive asking and hearing it confirmed. If that hit you at all, if you've ever loved someone who went quiet instead of just talking to you, stay with me, because this story is about to get a lot harder before it gets better. Subscribe if you haven't, and tell me in the comments, what hurts more, being falsely accused, or never even being asked for your side of the story. Ryu Sang didn't stop at wrecking a marriage. That was never the whole plan. He started planting quiet rumors inside Ihan's own organization, that the child, or children, might not even be his. In that world, bloodline isn't sentimental. It's leverage. It's loyalty. It's whether the older men keep following you or start looking for the exit. Business partners got hesitant. Political allies got careful. Enemies who used to lower their eyes started lifting them. Ryu Sang moved fast while Ihan was distracted. Quietly approached 2 of Ihan's longest-standing allies with offers dressed up as concern, just making sure your interests are protected, in case the succession gets complicated. Neither said yes outright. Both stopped returning calls as quickly as they used to. That, in itself, was a kind of yes. Ihan, breaking apart privately, got harder in public. Colder decisions. Harsher punishments for small mistakes. He stopped sleeping properly. Started losing focus in meetings he used to run without effort, twice caught staring at nothing for whole minutes while men waited, afraid to interrupt him. His own men got scared of his silence. Which is exactly what Ryu Sang wanted. He didn't need to shoot Ihan. He just needed to make him doubt the one person who actually loved him. Meanwhile, one of Ryu Sang's own men was starting to fall apart from the inside. Kwon Tae-min. He'd followed Oyen to a hospital appointment, part of the job, nothing personal, and watched her sit alone in a waiting room full of couples. Every other woman in that room had a hand to hold. She had her own hand. Holding itself. Something in Tae-min just broke a little, watching that. He thought of his own mother, who'd raised him and his sisters alone after his father left, who used to sit in waiting rooms exactly like that one with the same practiced, careful smile. He kept following Oyen for another week, and the more he watched her, kind to strangers, patient with the elderly women in her program, gentle even with the men Ryu Sang had sent to spy on her, never once suspecting them, the harder it got to keep telling himself this was just a job. Days later, he found her alone in a parking garage. Approached carefully, She was afraid, obviously, a strange man stepping out of the shadows toward a pregnant woman alone. But then he told her who he was. And what he'd seen. The surveillance. The edited photos. The fake messages. The trusted man inside Ihon's own circle who delivered it all like gospel. That her husband believed she'd betrayed him. And had never once asked her if it was true. Oyen didn't scream. Didn't collapse. She just went very, very still. So he judged me, she said quietly. In silence. Taemin apologized. Handed her proof, the manipulated images, the fabricated timeline. Enough to clear her name completely. But even holding proof of her own innocence in her hands, Oyen understood something Taemin couldn't fix for her. The fake photo wasn't the real betrayal. The real betrayal was that Ihon chose fear over just asking. She sat in her car in that parking garage for a long time after Taemin walked away, proof in her lap, and felt something shift in her that she didn't have a name for yet. Not quite anger. Not quite grief. Something closer to a decision. She decided, right there, to take a DNA test. Not because she was guilty. Not to beg to be believed. Because the truth deserved a witness. Because Ihon needed to see it with his own eyes, and face, at the same time, exactly what his silence had cost. She arranged everything through a private hospital. Asked the doctor to document it properly, because in that world, rumors don't just hurt feelings, they end lives. She wrote him a letter. Didn't hand it over yet. Just wrote it and waited. I loved you when others feared you. I married you when people warned me not to. I carried your child while you carried suspicion. If this result finally gives you peace, read it. But after you read the truth, you still have to face the question you were too afraid to ask me. And then, the twist that changes everything. Ihon eventually discovered who the other man in that fake photo actually was. Not a lover. A man connected to a piece of Ihon's own past he didn't even know existed. A lead on his late mother, old letters, photographs, a recording of her voice that had been buried in storage for over a decade. Oyen had been quietly working to recover all of it for months, ever since the night she found him alone at his mother's memorial. A memory box. Something to give him before their children arrived, so he could step into fatherhood already a little more healed than his own father had left him. She wasn't meeting another man. She was trying to give her husband back a piece of his mother. And Ryu Sang had taken that, an act of pure, quiet love, and twisted it into the exact weapon he needed. Which brings us back. Rain. Hallway. Sealed envelope. Ihon on his knees, the letter still in his hand, reading the part about the memory box for the third time because the first 2 times his eyes wouldn't focus. Every memory hits him at once. The baby shoes she never got to give him. The dinners that went cold. The nursery wall she painted alone. The nights she waited up and he let her wait. Asking if she'd done something wrong, and him saying 4 words instead of the truth. He understands, fully, for the first time in his life, what his silence actually cost. I protected you, he says, voice breaking in a way it has never broken in front of another human being, from every enemy. Beat. Except the one inside me. He apologizes. Fully. No excuses folded into it. Admits he should have asked. Admits the silence wounded her worse than any rival ever could have. Oyen cries. But she doesn't fall into his arms. Not yet. I can forgive betrayal from enemies, she tells him. From you. I needed trust. If you're still with me, you already know this isn't over. There's still a rival to answer for, and Ihon is about to stop being a husband for a moment and become exactly what Seoul has always been afraid of. Subscribe if you haven't, and tell me, should he forgive himself for what he did to her? Or should he spend the rest of his life earning it back? Here's what justice looked like. Not rage. Not the old Ihon, the one who solved problems with fear. This time, proof. Taemin handed over internal recordings, weeks of them, time-stamped and complete. The bribed clinic assistant confessed under pressure, in a room with lawyers present, everything recorded and clean. A digital forensics expert confirmed, cleanly and undeniably, that the photos had been altered, pixel by pixel, laid out in a report thick enough to end any argument before it started. Ihon didn't move first with violence. He moved first with exposure. He called a meeting of every ally who had gone quiet on him in the past 2 months. Laid the entire conspiracy out on the table, the surveillance photos, the fabricated timeline, the confession. Watched, in real time, the color drain from the faces of men who'd already started planning for a future without him. I don't need you to apologize, he told them. I need you to understand what almost happened here, so it never happens to any of you. That single meeting did more damage to Ryu Sang than a decade of business warfare ever had. Every thread traced back to one man. Baek Ryu Sang lost his political protection the moment Ihan released proof of the blackmail, the manipulation, the violation of a pregnant woman's private medical records. His investors walked within 72 hours. His own men turned on him before he even understood what was happening. The wall in his office, the one covered in photos and red string, was the first thing his own lieutenant photographed and handed to prosecutors. He was arrested during a deal at Incheon port, not shot, not beaten. Just, finished. Legally. Publicly. Completely. The kind of ending that, in that world, is somehow more feared than a bullet, because it strips a man of the only thing he had left, the illusion of power. Park Jun-seo, the trusted man who delivered the fake evidence, was stripped of everything. Rank. Protection. Handed over with full proof of the bribe. Ihan told him, flat, before he was taken away. Betrayal isn't strength. It's cowardice wearing loyalty's coat. The clinic assistant lost her license, faced charges for leaking confidential records. The editor who built the fake photos was exposed publicly. His own portfolio, ironically, was what identified his editing style to the forensics team, and that exposure was, in the end, what made the whole conspiracy collapse in on itself. And Taemin, the one man in that whole web who actually told the truth when it cost him something. Oyen asked for mercy on his behalf. Sat across from Ihan and told him, plainly, that the same silence that almost destroyed their marriage should not be the thing that decided a man's fate. That mercy, given correctly, was its own kind of strength. Ihan gave it. Let him disappear from that world completely. Quietly arranged a new identity, a clean start, enough money to actually build something honest. A second chance most men in that life never get. The real victory, though, was never the revenge. It was Ihan finally understanding, months too late, but understanding all the same, that one honest conversation could have spared them both from all of it. Trust doesn't come back just because the truth does. Oyen didn't forgive him overnight. She moved into a separate room for a while. He didn't push. Didn't try to buy his way back in with gifts, the way his old instincts screamed at him to. He changed instead. Showed up to every single appointment. Sat in that same waiting room she'd sat in alone, and this time reached for her hand before she had to reach for his. Asked how she was feeling, and actually listened to the whole answer, not just enough of it to respond. Stopped deciding things for her without asking first. Told her when he was afraid, instead of disappearing into silence the way he always had. The first time he did it, admitted, out loud, that he was terrified of becoming his father. His voice shook the entire time. She didn't say anything. She just reached over and held his hand until it stopped. He finally opened the memory box. Read his mother's letters one at a time, some nights only able to get through a single page. Heard her voice again for the first time since he was a boy, on an old recording Oyen had restored. And cried. Really cried. Maybe for the first time since she died. One night Oyen found him sitting alone in the nursery, holding the tiny baby shoes she'd once meant to give him months ago. I thought silence made me strong, he told her. Beat. It almost made me lose you. She sat down beside him. Didn't say it was okay. Didn't have to. Just, sat there. That was the beginning. 9 months later, Oyen gave birth to identical twin boys, right there in Seoul. And this time, Ihan wasn't standing in a hallway surrounded by guards, hiding from what was happening on the other side of a door. He was beside her. Holding her hand through every second of it. When the twins cried for the first time, the man who had made grown adults lower their eyes just by walking into a room, broke down completely. Held one baby. Then the other. Utterly undone by 2 tiny lives breathing against his chest. Still powerful. Just, no longer hiding from the soft parts of himself. They named the boys Haru and Hanol. A new day. And heaven. I almost let fear steal you, Ihan whispered to them, before I ever even met you. Then he looked at Oyen. And I will spend the rest of my life, he said, making sure your mother never has to question my trust again. They didn't become perfect after that. Nobody does. But their marriage got stronger, because it finally got honest. Oyen didn't forgive him because a DNA test cleared her name. She forgave him because he actually changed. Took responsibility. Learned, slowly, how to speak instead of disappear. And Ihan learned something his father never once taught him, that protecting someone's body isn't the same as protecting their heart. That suspicion left unspoken doesn't stay quiet forever. It grows into something cruel if you let it sit long enough in the dark. Jang Ihan spent his whole life defeating enemies, in boardrooms, in alleyways, on shipping docks, behind closed political doors. But the enemy that nearly took everything from him wasn't Baek Ryu-sang. It was fear. It was silence. It was believing, for one unforgivable stretch of months, that love should be tested instead of trusted. Oyen's loyalty never needed a DNA result to be real. The result only confirmed what had been true the entire time. She loved him when the rest of the world feared him. She chose him when everyone warned her not to. She carried his children while he carried doubt he never once said out loud. And in the end, the most powerful thing Jang Ihan ever did in his life wasn't destroying the man who tried to take everything from him. It was finally looking at the woman he loved. And asking for the truth. Before he let himself believe a lie. Because love can survive almost anything the outside world throws at it. But it starts to die the moment two people stop speaking to each other. If this one got to you, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe for more stories like this one, and drop a comment telling me what you took from Oyen and Ihan's story. And while you're down there, tell me where in the world you're watching from.